Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the John DeVito Show. Today, I'm going to be taking on a very serious and difficult topic. This is something that has been weighing on me for many years now, and also weighing on the many residents of Massachusetts, especially central Massachusetts. Now, we tackle a lot of difficult topics on this show. And I wanted to do a special show about a young woman who lost her life, unfortunately, 20 years ago. Her name was Molly Bish. She was a beautiful, young, 16-year-old girl who was from the city of Warren, Massachusetts. If you're not familiar with Warren, Massachusetts, it's a small, little, out-of-the-way town in central Massachusetts. It's very small. It's out of the way. It's the type of town where you would feel like you could raise your family safely in this small little town. And, when I think about this case a lot, it's broken my heart for many, many years. I was a young father that had just moved to the central Massachusetts area. I now have 4 children. My children are 18, 16, 14, and 12. At the time, I was a very new dad. I had a son. And she disappeared back in 2000. I had just gotten married, and this really hit me hard because when you see this young woman, if you're not familiar with the case, she was 16 years old. She had just started her first job. She was a beautiful young woman, had her entire life in front of her, and then her mother unfortunately brought her to work one day, and she disappeared. And it was a very, very sad story. It's still a very, very sad story. It took a few years for them to find Molly. Unfortunately, they found her remains in the woods, and the family is still trying to figure out who took Molly and ended her life. So I'm going to give a little bit of background because the local news stations just came out with a new suspect that they feel maybe was the person that took Molly's life. And I hope that for the family, and I hope for the residents of that small town of Warren, Massachusetts, and I hope for all of Massachusetts that they can maybe put some closure to this case. I mean, nothing is going to bring Molly back. Nothing is going to, again, resolve this issue with her family. But at least maybe we can find out who this person was that did this horrible, despicable thing to this beautiful young woman and ended her life so prematurely. So, for the people that don't live in Massachusetts, I mean, my podcast goes out, through all over the world. If you live in Massachusetts, about Molly Bish, about this case, and it did get national attention. And this is very close to, where I live, and it just breaks my heart. So I want to give people a little bit of background on this case and what happened, and give you a little idea about Molly's family, and the attempt that the family is still making after these many years to find out who actually was the person responsible for taking Molly. So to give you a little bit about Molly Anne Bish was born in 1983 on August 2nd, and unfortunately passed away on June 27th, 2000. She was a 16-year-old American girl, from rural Worcester County, Massachusetts, who disappeared while working as a lifeguard in her hometown of Warren, Massachusetts. Her remains were found 3 years later in the neighboring Hampden County, which was not far away from where she lived. And her remains were, found in the woods, and it was at the time the largest search in the state's history. So police believe that Bish was murdered, and several suspects over the years have been publicly identified, but the case remains officially unresolved as 2021. So, it was obvious that someone took her. It was obvious that she was murdered. It was obvious that her remains were left in the woods, not too far from where she was at that time. And really, there were very few leads for many, many years. But then over the years, there have been leads. There have been a few people that have been looked at very seriously. And we'll get into that in a little bit. So I want to give you a little bit of information as to what happened. So her disappearance happened in the summer of 2000. 16-year-old Molly Bish began working as a lifeguard at the small Commons Pond in Warren, Massachusetts. On June 26th, the day before her disappearance, her mother, Maggie, saw a mustached man in a white car parked in the lot of the beach where Bish's lifeguard post was located. Although he seemed suspicious at the time, she thought no further about him until after Bish's disappearance. On June 27th, Maggie drove her daughter to Commons Pond and dropped her off near the lifeguard station. Maggie reportedly saw no sign of the stranger from the previous day or his white sedan. However, another witness reported that he saw a man matching the stranger's description in the pond's parking lot just before Bish arrived. A local worker also reported that he saw a similar car parked at a cemetery connected to the pond by a path. Maggie Bish was the last known person to see her daughter before the disappearance. Several hours later, police contacted Molly Bish's parents, informing them that no lifeguard had been on duty all day and that Bish's belongings had been left unattended at her station. So the scary thing of this was it appears that, Maggie, Molly's mother, saw the man the day before her daughter was taken. And, he was apparently pretty arrogant. He was staring at the mother. He was staring at Molly. And, the mother thought it was creepy, but thought nothing of it. I mean, he was sitting in the car, in his white car, smoking a cigarette. And he seemed like he was out of place. But, he could have been a guy that just, pulled over for a minute to take a break, whatever. But the next day, the mother went, dropped her off. There was no sign of this man. And like anybody else, you would have thought, okay, well, it was just a random thing that guy was there and thought nothing of it. So dropped off her daughter. And then all of a sudden, the daughter literally just disappeared from the beach. She disappeared from the beach, never to be seen again. And it's just so sad. It's such a tragedy. And I will say that a few years after this happened, because this is something that I really thought about a lot, this hit me hard. I don't know why it did. It was just heartbreaking to see this happen. So I actually at one point drove to this beach because I wanted to see the location and try to figure out maybe myself, what could have happened. So I went to the beach area, walked out to the pond, saw the area in which Molly must have been. And there was a lot of talk about this man maybe knowing the area. And right behind the beach, up this hill, there was a pathway and there was a cemetery directly behind the pond area. So many people thought that maybe this man knew the area. He knew that there was a cemetery in that area. And again, if you were not from this area, you would not know there was a cemetery there. I mean, I wouldn't have known. The only reason I known is because people were guessing that maybe this gentleman came from the woods and went after her, going through that path. And, I use the word gentleman. That's the wrong word. The more appropriate word is killer, murderer, animal, just horrible person that would do something like this. So I did go to the pond and I did see that there was a cemetery back behind where this pond was. And, who knows, whatever ruse this guy used to gain her trust or do whatever he did. But I mean, that is probably, the most likely area of where this whole abduction happened. So we're going to get into more of that in a little bit. But okay, there was talk also now, they had searched for Molly for years and, they couldn't find her. She disappeared. I mean, I can't imagine how difficult this was for the family and the relatives in the community to have this young woman disappear, not know what happened to her, not be able to find her, either alive or, unfortunately, as they did find her dead. But there was an extensive search that was immediately launched. It became the largest and most expensive search for a missing person ever in the state of Massachusetts. So her case was profiled on numerous American television shows. It was on Disappeared. It was on America's Most Wanted, Unsolved Mysteries, and 48 Hours. A hunter had seen. Now, this is something that, I probably wouldn't even have thought about this if I had been this hunter. But the area where she was found was an area that was, pretty popular with hunters. And a hunter had seen a blue bathing suit in the woods on an area of Whiskey Hill in Palmer in the late fall of 2002. In May of 2003, he mentioned this to a gentleman by the name of Tim McGugan, who contacted police. Now, for me, if I had seen a piece of clothes in the woods and it was like a blue bathing suit, I mean, I think most people, when they think of lifeguards, they think of orange bathing suits, the bright orange. So I don't know if that would have connected my mind if I had seen that. And eventually, at some point, he did mention to this gentleman, Tim McGugan, that he had seen a bathing suit in the woods, but it was a blue bathing suit. So this gentleman, Tim McGugan, contacted police, and then an intense search of the area soon located Bish's body. And on June 9th of 2003, her body was found only 5 miles from her family's home. It was in a different county. It was in the next town over. But again, it was only 5 miles from her family's home. So a cause of death was not determined, but investigators presume that Bish was murdered and her remains were most likely buried in this spot. So, all right, there have been a number of developments over the years. And the one thing I can say is, being a person that lives in Massachusetts, I've experienced over the last 20 years what her parents have been through. And when I say experienced, I should say witnessed. I've watched them on television, pleading for help in solving their daughter's murder. I have seen them at local state fairs where they have set up, tables, and they founded something called the Molly Bish Foundation. And it's in collaboration with Anna Maria College here in Massachusetts. And they have gone over and above in going out and fingerprinting children and doing everything they can to bring awareness to the dangers that, young people have in this world today. And unfortunately, in this world, we have a lot of sick people. We have people that haven't gotten the help that they've needed. We have people that are, like this animal that went out and just took a beautiful young woman and ended her life. And I hope that if this person is still alive, this person is found and this person is punished and this person is brought to justice. But if the person has passed, like some presume that he has, I hope that this person is exactly where they belong, when they leave this world. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. But now in 2005, a Connecticut resident charged with attempted kidnapping in Connecticut was briefly under investigation in connection with the case. And I can't imagine how difficult this was for the family, because over the years, time and time again, there were new suspects coming up. They had to continually revisit this. And, they were not able to put an end to everything that happened. And I saw an interview recently with Molly Bish's sister, and I feel bad for her. She's a teacher. She lost her sister. And then she said, for the last 20 years, she's had to investigate and try to solve her sister's murder. And she someday hopes to go back to being just a teacher, not a teacher that's trying to solve a murder, but a teacher. And I can't imagine what it's been like for her to have to live with this, her family to have to live with this. And things like this just should not happen. So, there have been a number of different people. Now, one of the big suspects that was named in this case. Now, nothing ever happened with this person, but there was a suspect by the name of Rodney Stanger was his name. He was a Florida resident who was convicted of murdering his girlfriend and had lived in Southbridge, Massachusetts. That's a few miles from the town of Warren, and he had lived there for more than 20 years. So Stanger moved to Florida a year after Bish's murder. So that seems pretty suspect, obviously. And following the murder of Crystal Morrison, Stanger's girlfriend of 20 years, Morrison's sister alerted the Massachusetts authorities. Stanger was known to have access to a white car similar to the one seen the day before Bish's appearance. He was also known to fish in Commons Pond and hunt in the woods. So this guy had the knowledge of the area. He lived in the area. He was violent. He had a white car just like the car that Maggie Bish had seen at Commons Pond. He fished in Commons Pond, and he was known to hunt in the woods where Bish's body was found. So, I mean, you can't check many more boxes than that. It sounds like the Stanger had a lot of knowledge about all of the areas that Molly Bish had been on that fateful, unfortunate day. So, in addition to all of these different facts, Stanger also closely matched the description provided by Maggie Bish of the man seen in the white sedan the day before the Molly Bish disappearance. So Stanger, though, has not been charged in the case. Now, I encourage all of you, whether you're in Massachusetts, whether you're in New England, whether you're in California, Texas, London, wherever you may be listening to my show, Google the name Molly Bish, Mollybish. You can see the sketches that were done of the person that Maggie Bish saw on that day. Take a look at the sketch. See if he looks familiar to you. If you're in Massachusetts, maybe it's someone that you know. And if it is, come forward and help this family try to finally catch the person that murdered their beautiful young daughter. Okay. So in 2009, when this Rodney Stanger was being investigated for the Bish murder, police also questioned him in connection with the 1993 murder of another young girl by the name of Holly Perrinian. She went missing in Sturbridge, which again is pretty close to Warren. Now, Bish and Perrinian were the same age in 1993. Bish had written a letter of hope to Perrinian's parents in 1993. Now, Stanger was not charged in this case either. In 2012, forensics evidence led authorities to a person by the name of David Pouliot, who died in 2003, as a person of interest in the Holly Perrinian case. Now, what is crazy about this entire story is that when Molly was a young girl, she actually wrote the family of Holly Perrinian and basically wished them the best in finding their daughter. I mean, if you think about those two girls crossing paths, Holly was taken from her family and she was murdered in 1993. Young Molly Bish, obviously a young woman with a big heart, a young girl at that time with a big heart, sent a message to the family of Holly Perrinian, wishing them the best and hoping they found their daughter. Little did anyone know at that time that unfortunately the same thing would happen to Molly Bish. And I've thought over the years, could there be a connection there? Could there be a connection between Perrinian and Bish, where that letter was sent? Could it have been someone close to Holly Perrinian that saw that letter? I don't know. To me, I know there are coincidences in life, but to me, that just seems like a huge, huge, huge coincidence. But it's something that's always kind of haunted me a little bit. So we've got these two young girls that have both lost their lives. One of them reached out to the family of the other, and it was just, horrible to think that these two young girls lost their lives and they actually had a connection with each other. So in November of 2011, Gerald Battistoni, he was basically a confidential informant number 62 for the Eastern Hampden County Narcotic Task Force, was also named as a suspect in the Bish's death by a private detective, Dan Malley of Massachusetts. Battistoni served time in prison for repeatedly raping a teenage girl in the early 1990s. He attempted suicide in prison after newspaper articles identified him as the potential suspect in the Bish and Perrinian deaths. Battistoni, who had a criminal record dating back to 1980, had been in the area where Bish's body was found and resembled also that composite sketch of the man Maggie saw in the parking lot the day before Bish disappeared. So after Battistoni was named as a suspect, private detective Dan Malley and the Bish family asked for DNA testing to be done, and the Massachusetts State Police sent the DNA evidence to Texas. This Gerald Battistoni died at the Lemuel Shattuck Hospital in Jamaica Plain in November of 2014. So he's another suspect that has passed away. And, again, as of 2021, there have been no arrests in this case. So, here we are. We're still here. We don't know who took her life. And recently, this is the reason why I decided to do this, kind of quick show about Molly Bish, because I was hoping that, if someone that listens to my show maybe lives in the area, they maybe know of something that happened, maybe they can contact the authorities and help the Bish family finally put this entire thing to rest. But very recently, Worcester County District Attorney Joseph Early announced another suspect. His name was Francis P. Sumner Sr., and he's another man with more than a 20-page criminal record. He is now being eyed in this case. Sumner was found dead inside of his home in Spencer, Massachusetts on May 4th, 2016. Early did not say exactly how Sumner was connected to the case, but that investigators recently reviewed new information that had led them to investigate him. On July 9th, 1982, Sumner was convicted of aggravated rape and kidnapping from an attack the prior October inside an apartment that Sumner was trying to let. He was sentenced to concurrent sentences of 15 to 18 years on the rape charge and 9 to 10 years on the kidnapping charges. The earliest Sumner could have been released from Walpole State Prison was in 1997. It was not immediately clear how long Sumner was incarcerated for that case. Early said that Sumner was incarcerated several times during his life. So, I think when I hear about all of these names, it makes me think about a few different things. Number one, I cannot imagine the horrible roller coaster ride that this family has been on. And not just the Molly Bish family, but also the Holly Perrinian family. I can't imagine how horrible this has been for both families to have to go through this. And then the second thought makes me realize that it scares me to think that there are this many people living, in this area or basically any area that have this violent of a past. I mean, there was another young woman in our area recently, a couple years back. Her name was Vanessa Marcotte. She came home to her family in Princeton, Massachusetts. She went for a jog, and she never came home. And unfortunately, the police, a short time later, after an investigation, found the charred remains of her body in the woods, no more than maybe a mile or two from her parents' house. And it turned out it was a delivery man that they eventually arrested. He had boxed her in with his truck. He murdered her, and I'm not sure exactly what else he did, but he did give DNA evidence, and he was tied to the murder. So it just scares me as to how much violence we have in this world, how many people are out there committing violence, and how many young women have lost their lives because of this. And, I've done shows in the past where I've talked about the problems we have with mental health in this country. And, we're not talking about just gun violence like I've done shows on in the past. We're talking about these young women who have been attacked, who have had their lives ended because of people who, for whatever reason, have been broken, have become evil, have gone out and, murdered innocent people that deserve to have a full life, deserve to have, a life where they could maybe make a difference for the greater good of everybody. And unfortunately, they were cut short. And this, to me, still breaks my heart every day when I think about the people in this country that are not getting the mental health services they need. And because of that, we are losing beautiful young women and beautiful young people that are having their life cut short by these people who should not be out in society for whatever reason. I don't know why they do the things that they do. I don't know why they murder. I don't understand how they can go out and end the lives of these beautiful young women. But I mean, isn't there something we can do as a society to maybe prevent this? Isn't there something we can do to, I guess, point out people who have these tendencies and either help them or prevent them from hurting or murdering or killing or doing these horrible things to people? It just breaks my heart to think about it. And, I just want to say to the Bish family, the Perrinian family, and even the Marcotte family, my heart is with all of you. It really is. And, I will pray for all of you. I hope that, all of you get closure in the cases that you have. But even with that closure, I mean, it's still not going to bring your loved one back, but at least they'll give you that, hopefully, that peace of mind where you can move forward and believe that your loved one maybe is in a better place. Now, I do want to talk about, I didn't want to make this too long of a show today, but I wanted to just kind of talk about this a little bit. Now, we mentioned a little bit more about the connection, to Holly Perrinian. Sturbridge, Massachusetts is probably, if I had to guess, about 20 minutes away from Warren, Massachusetts. So it's pretty close. It's another small little town, small little nothing central Massachusetts town. And when she was murdered, 7 years earlier, her body was also found in a wooded area in Hampden County. Now, that's the same county that Molly's body was found in as well. So police considered the possibility that the two cases could be related. Again, that the gentleman that we talked about earlier, and again, I said the word gentleman, I should say the, evil person, Pouliot, is considered a person of interest in both cases. It was discovered that Molly Bish had written that letter to Holly Perrinian's family following Holly's disappearance. And this right here, and this is tough to read, but this is a little excerpt from Molly Bish's letter to the family of Holly Perrinian. And this just speaks to what a big heart this young girl had, what a wonderful person she was, and who knows what she could have accomplished in her life if she was given the chance. So this is the letter, and we're going to pretty much, I think, get to the end of the podcast here. I may give a brief closing, but this is what Molly wrote to Holly Perrinian's family. And she was the age of 10 years old when she wrote this. I'm very sorry. I wish I could make it up to you. Holly is a very pretty girl. She is almost as tall as me. I wish I knew Holly. I hope they found her. Molly Bish. And to think that Molly wrote that letter, and then 7 years later or 6 years later, Molly would also unfortunately be taken and separated from her family, never to be seen again. So, if you're out there, if you know anything about this case, if you can help the Bish family, I encourage you to report it to the police. If you can help the Perrinian family, report it to the police. And, if you know of somebody out there that's struggling, if you have someone in your life that's struggling, try to get them the help that they can. I don't know why these things happen. I don't know why people do the things that they do. I don't know why violence is such a big part of our society. I don't know why our country doesn't provide mental health services for the people that need it. But it's time here in the year 2021 that we move forward and we find a way to stop these senseless murders from happening. I mean, it breaks my heart to look at this. It breaks my heart to see these poor young women who have lost their lives. It breaks my heart to see families that have been separated from their loved ones. So again, if you're out there and you know someone that needs help, try to get them help. If you're out there, make sure that you take care of your children the best of your ability. And, again, I hate to say it, in today's society, it's very hard to be able to trust, because sometimes you have people that are close to you. You feel like you can trust them, and you're proven wrong and found out that you can't trust them. So just remember that, do the best you can to protect your family, to protect your children, to protect your loved ones. If you see something out there that doesn't look right, step in and try to prevent something sinister from happening. And again, if you know someone that's struggling with mental health, our country right now does not provide the services that they need in order to help people that truly need help. But if you know someone out there that needs help, do what you can to try to help them. Because again, these senseless murders have to stop. And if you know anything, again, like I mentioned, about Holly's disappearance, if you know anything about Molly's disappearance, please report it. Please come forward and help the families move forward and just finally put these things to rest, so they don't have to sit back and live with the unknown of not knowing, what happened to their loved ones and what happened to, the beautiful women in their life that they've now unfortunately lost at the hands of some, very sick people. So that's it for today. I just wanted to get on and talk a little bit about the Molly Bish case. As you all know, I've done some shows. I did some shows on the Pamela Smart case. Interviewed Diane Diamond from Entertainment, from Entertainment TV. I interviewed numerous people that were involved in her case. Through email, I interviewed Pamela Smart herself about some of the things that she's been through in her life. I exposed many abuses across the Midwest in some Christian boarding schools and Christian boarding homes. I think I interviewed over 20 people that have been abused in multiple places. And so far, it's resulted in one of those schools being closed permanently, and the other one is under intense scrutiny. And my show actually led to an investigation on Dateline NBC. So I hope the show helps. Again, I don't love doing shows like this, but this has been a case that's been on my mind for 20 years. And, I feel like I've almost lived through it with the family because it's been in the press so much. And I just, pray to God that we can maybe give the family some peace. And even if the person that committed the murder has passed away, at least if we can maybe determine who that person is so the family can maybe finally move forward and stop having to investigate this case, then they can at least move forward, have closure, and finally put this thing to rest. Okay, so I'm going to sign off. Very somber show, I know, but if anyone knows anything, please, reach out to local authorities. And if you know the Bish family, show them support. Continue to show them support. If you know the Perrinian family, same thing. Show them support. And like I've always said to all of you today, if you're listening to my voice right now, go out and do something good for somebody else today. Live in the moment. Enjoy your life. Enjoy today. Pay something forward today. Hold the door open for somebody. Give someone a smile. If someone needs money and you have it, give them some money to maybe help them. And do what you can in some small way to make this world a better place. Okay? So signing off, this is John DeVito for The John DeVito Show, and I'll see you all soon. Take care now.